If you want to build your first gaming PC and you've been told you've got to go get this pre-built from this store, or you've got to go build these parts because they're the best, then I've got something else for you here today. Something that when you build it, you're actually going to be building value on top of what you paid for the parts. See, when you go buy a new PC, if you build it yourself, you probably end up losing $100 instantly the moment you finish that PC. And if you buy a pre-built, you may even lose more, a couple of $100. But what we've got here today, we're actually going to be making money. And you're like, how? Let me explain. Now, the best thing about today's PC is it will come under $450 US, so it won't break the bank, and it'll give you some of the best price performance PC gaming has to offer. But let's go through these parts one by one, why we've selected them, and take you through the process of everything you'll need to do. The first one, and we've got two main stars of the show here. The first one is the graphics card. This is an RTX 3060 Ti. Now, we picked this up for 320 Australian dollars, which in US dollars would be around about 218 USD. Now, if you go on eBay, cards like this can go for around this price. So it's not unrealistic to get a 3060 Ti for around this price. Now, the next piece of the puzzle here is a really important one, because this is where you're making the most value out of your system that you put together. And this is an OEM system that I picked up for 100 Australian dollars. That's right, 100 Australian dollars, and we got an i7 8700, a motherboard, a power supply, and no RAM and no SSD, because the person who sold it to me gutted all those parts out. So what we're gonna do right now is pull this motherboard out of the case and then move on with our build. So what we're gonna need for this is a screwdriver and some snips, and you may wish to do a bit of cleaning on the motherboard and stuff like that, so you can use some detergent wipes. But basically we just start getting straight into this by straight away unscrewing our CPU cooler, and then start unscrewing all the 6 screws on the motherboard here and getting this motherboard and CPU out. Now, there is some banger GPU in here, which I think it's a GT 720, which no gamer is going to want. I mean, maybe it'll play Roblox, I'm not too sure, but another thing is too, one important thing about this case is keep this case and power supply when you are done with the build. And you're probably thinking like, why would I want to keep this case and power supply? Well, the reason is because later on in the future, if you come into a really cheap, and I'm talking extremely cheap, motherboard, CPU, and cooler, you can use this case and power supply. And say a GTX 750 Ti, or if you're like me and you've got one of these hanging around, a GT 1030, you can whack it in and you've got yourself an entry-level PC that you can flip and make some profit on. So we're just gonna get rid of the rest of these screws as well, and then start removing this motherboard. Finished with this, we can put this abomination aside and come back to a later date. Now we can quickly wipe this down with a disinfectant wipe, just clean all the dust off, make sure it's all clean, and we'll put on some new thermal paste later. So now that we have gave this motherboard an emergency evac out of that abomination, we're now looking at a beautiful green PCB and a CPU that needs a cooler. Here's where we're going with the Deepcool AG400, which I picked up for 29 Australian dollars. It was on sale. That's about 20 USD. And it's just going to not only add a better aesthetic to the build, it's also going to keep this i7 8700 a lot cooler than the other Acer default cooler would. Then we've got our memory, which we're going to install as well. This is 32 gigabytes of DDR4 memory, 3200 megahertz RGB, and it's used, and the best thing is I'm saving 30% off what a new kit would, and it's got a lifetime warranty. Now, another benefit of going with a used kit like this is the motherboard can sometimes have Windows activated from the get-go. In this case, it may have Windows 10 Pro activated already. We'll find out later in the video, but if you don't have Windows activated, don't stress. Today's video sponsor has you covered. SCD Keys, with their limited time Christmas sale right now, you can save 35% off the price of their keys by using the coupon code TYC. Just for this limited time, usually you guys use BFTYC, but you can save a little bit more if you use TYC, get you an extra 5% off on checkout, and they've got Windows 10 Pro keys, they've got Windows 10 Home, they've got Windows 11 Pro, and the prices do differ, but once you've got the right key that you want to go with, you can then add that to cart, check out using something like PayPal, which they offer, and then go to your user center and then click Get Key, and you are now ready to rock and roll. And later on the video, we'll show you how to use this key to activate Windows. So our next step is to get our GPU box, put the motherboard on top here because this is going to make sure our motherboard doesn't get damaged. And then we are going to take this CPU cooler out of the box and get it all ready. So the good thing here is this motherboard already came with a backplate pre-installed. So all we have to really do here is start getting the motherboard ready for the cooler. So we're gonna put these little screws down, and this is what comes with the deep cool cooler. And then we're gonna get our faceplate here and put this on top and then start screwing this down. Now this cooler comes with some thermal paste included, so we just open that up and just put that on our CPU, like so. And now we are ready to drop the CPU cooler on. Well, not drop it on, but just place it on gently. So make sure you remove this label on the bottom here, otherwise you'll get really bad cooling performance. Okay, so now we just plug this CPU cooler right in the CPU fan slot at the top here. We also get our RGB memory, and we can put that in right now, because what we're gonna do is, before we actually put it in the case, this is actually, for me, especially when I'm building used PCs, I like to do this first. And that is, we're just gonna start testing out this PC to make sure it works before we put it in the case. And this is where we've got our next part of the PC. We're gonna open up two more boxes, and this is the RTX 3060 Ti. Take the card out of the box, and we're still gonna use this box to put our motherboard on, but we've got to talk about one more component here, and that is the power supply. And here's where we're going with the Deepcool DE600 V2. I picked this up for 49 Australian dollars, which is roughly 33 USD. It's a basic power supply, and it should do the job absolutely fine for today's PC. So now we're just going to hook up the cables right to where they need to go. 24 pin just goes in that way. You're going to know there's only one way this connector can go in, and that's in the bit where the clip is. And then we've got our CPU 4 pin. Because this motherboard's a cheapie, we only need 4 pins, so we can split that and then plug that in. And again, this can only go in one way. And it's good actually to do this outside of the PC, because it's very easy to get a grip of things, and if it's the first time building it, it's easy just to learn the ropes and you're gonna have no problems. And now the last part is to put the graphics card on the test bench system here, where it goes into the 16-speed express PCIe lane. But one thing as well is, before you put this in, you may wish to clean your used GPU. This one here, however, is so clean, I can just tell by looking at it that I don't need to do any cleaning. Though I find as well with RTX 3000 series cards, I've actually never had to clean one as of yet, because even if I bought one off a crypto miner, I find the guys selling those actually reapply the thermal paste before they sell them. Main reason is they don't want them coming back with problems. So if you do, however, want to clean your GPU, I'll put some links to some videos that I've made in the past on how to take apart your GPU, clean it up, put some new thermal paste on, and or possibly change the memory pads. But you should be okay with an RTX 3000 series card. And actually, in a few minutes, we'll show you how you can test to see if your GPU may need new thermal paste or not. But what we've done right here is just insert it into that clip And we've also plugged in our PCIe 8 pin. This only goes in one way too, just like all the other cables. But now it's finally time to add our SSD to the build. Here's where we're going with a budget 1 terabyte. And I find if you're gaming, this is all you are going to need. You're not going to notice really any difference besides maybe some faster load times if you go with a more expensive SSD. But this one here represents fantastic value for money, coming at 50 Aussie dollars. So with connecting your SATA, this only goes in one way as well, with the L connecting to the L. And then that's the same with your motherboard, and that just connects in only one way. So you can't mess this up even if you are trying. I mean, if you're trying, you might be able to, but same it goes with the SATA connector. L goes to the L there, and that just connects up. So now it's time to boot up our PC, and we've got to make sure that we've got our Windows USB key inserted as well, because this is another important part. So we're going to plug this USB in as well as our keyboard and mouse, and we are ready to try our first build. Now, if you want to make a USB bootable, I'll put another link up here, how you can make one quickly and easily, and that will then allow the computer, since it's a more newer system with UEFI support, it should just recognize the USB and boot the first time you boot up the PC. And now we've done all that, our next step is to plug in our cable at the power supply at the back here, and also plug in our DisplayPort cable to the graphics card, or if you're using HDMI, then do that as well. And then we're ready for the last step, and that's to turn the power supply on into the on position. And because this is an OEM motherboard, it's actually already booting up automatically, which sometimes OEM systems with the green motherboards, they actually do this because it's a setting known as power off good. And if that means that it powered off suddenly last time, it'll just power on automatically. So now our PC is all booted up. We then have our mouse and keyboard plugged in. We can then go through here, and Windows, as it's a newer system, has automatically detected the USB boot drive, and we just go up to install Windows 10 Pro. Because I'm in Australia, I'm actually going to find the Australian version, and then click next, and then click install now, and accept the license terms, next, and then we go here to our unallocated space. We go new, click apply, click OK, and then we click on next. So now we've got Windows installed, it's time to connect to the internet, and here's we're just going to plug in our internet cable because it's faster internet than Wi-Fi, and we're going to go to NVIDIA download drivers, just type that in, and then go to the official drivers NVIDIA and find our GPU, which is the RTX 30 series, 3060 Ti, hit search, hit download, download again, left click run, install that, as well as get another program called Unigine Heaven benchmark, download that as well, install that, and we're just going to speed up the footage here, show you what I do, and then we'll get on to the good stuff. Now we can also do a quick optimization of Windows and just type in services down the bottom there, left click on running starters, and then quickly get this connected user telemetry experience gone, and also distributed link tracking client. Also, if you guys want to see a more advanced system tune, I will put a link up here for you where you can check out how I tune Windows 10 to make it super snappy. But this is just the basic one where you'll make all the difference here, where you go to advanced system settings. Just doing these little 2 minutes of tuning will just make a night and day difference in Windows. And that's your drivers installing when the screen goes black. Don't panic, it's normal. All right, so now we're ready to run Unigine Heaven, and we just go on full screen. I take that off and I go to 1600 by 900, just so we have a little bit of extra room to move around Windows if we need to do other stuff while this benchmark is running. But this should pretty much stress out the CPU quite well because it's a lower resolution, and also stress out our GPU, as well as giving us a temperature readout of the card in real time to know how hot the card is getting. We're just gonna leave it now for 5 minutes and see what its final temperature is on this model. So we'll come back in 5 minutes. If it's under 70 degrees, I'll be pretty happy with that. But if it goes, like say if it goes close to 80 degrees especially, then I'm definitely gonna be repasting this card. So we've got some good news, and that is the card is staying pretty much right on 70 degrees here. It's not getting any hotter, so we don't have to repaste. But even better news, we can now start to build out our PC because we know everything is working a-okay. There is no weird noises, there's no problems with the PC, it's not crashing. It is all good now to put inside this case. But if you don't want to spend money on a case and you want to be a bit of a rebel and you're just happy with this as your gaming PC, well then you can pretty much finish up the video right here. Which, when I was a kid, I actually had one of my setups exactly like this. And now we've got our case all open, we've taken the panels off. It is time to speed run this next part where we only really have to do a few different things to what we did before connecting everything up, and that's just screwing everything off. So power supply goes in, fan goes down, facing down like that, and the cables should be on the left-hand side of the back side of the case, and then we just screw this off. Next up, we've got our motherboard, and we've pre-applied our standoffs where they need to go, so we had to add 2 additional ones on the right-hand side, and then we plug that off once we insert the motherboard. And my goodness, this is going to be a tight fit. This is usually not the case because this is a special kind of motherboard that usually they're a bit smaller than this in terms of their length. They're not as long as this one right here. Now we also have to take out this back bit here to get our graphics card inserted. So just take out how many you're going to need to get the graphics card in. And then just pop it in like so. And we've also got to screw it off the graphics card on the side of the case right here. Now the final part of the build is to connect up our SATA port connector here to our SSD, plug our SSD in the back, but also connect our front I/O connectors. And usually you get a USB 3 or a USB 2 and or both. And we're going to connect, because this motherboard is a special motherboard, it's only really got a USB connector over the left-hand side, a 2-1, it doesn't have a 3. And then we've got our standard front panel here, which I'll pull up a diagram for you guys, where you've just then got to connect the necessary pins to where they need to go. Now that we've got everything plugged up, it's time for our cable management. I usually do what's called bird's nest cable management, and that's just grabbing all the remaining cables and just throwing them in this empty slot right here, and then zip tying off the rest of the stuff. Now also, since this case and motherboard is a unique combination here, we've actually, you may already notice with the camera, we've actually just double-sided taped the antennas down at the back here. And so that means we're going to have Wi-Fi on this build without spending any extra money on things like a USB adapter or adding in an add-in card, which we actually can't do because it's a small motherboard and we're out of room. First of all, our front I/O is a little bit janky. We've only got one USB port that works. Power and reset button work as well, which is good, but our USB 3 and one of the ports on the USB 2 doesn't work, and our front audio doesn't work either. And then for the memory, we actually can't lock in our XMP profiles because it's an OEM budget motherboard. So that means it's going to be running at 2400 megahertz on this board instead of 3200 megahertz. But that aside, we're going to download Fortnite now finally and test this whole system out with the 3060 Ti versus say the 14900K 7600 megahertz XMP profiles on DDR5 and see what kind of performance we're leaving on the table with a game like Fortnite, which I've got a feeling there won't be a whole lot of a difference. And also by typing activation in the search bar, we can then go to our Windows activation page, and what we see here is that Windows is already activated with Windows 10 Home, which was really weird because we tried to install Windows 10 Pro, and on this board it automatically recognized it had Home activated, so it installed that instead, which means that we can save a few dollars and we don't have to get a key. But if it says here Windows is not activated, you can get that Windows key that you got earlier from SCD Keys for cheap, and then bang it in here and hit activate, and then it'll go through and it'll activate your copy of Windows. So if you guys want to get that cheap key, I'll put the links in the description below. Make sure you use that coupon TYC for that big discount. And there it all is with our first used gaming PC. This has it all. It's got 32 gigabytes of RAM, it's got an i7, it's got a 3060 Ti. So at this stage, you're just doing helicopters because it's coming in with the price of a budget PC that has much inferior specs. Now, to put this in terms of a car analogy, you've got here a Ferrari that looks like a Ferrari, doesn't perform exactly like a Ferrari, but it turns heads like a Ferrari, and the interior and all that, it's not exactly a Ferrari too, but it's coming under half the price of a Ferrari. And that is what it's all about. It's about turning the heads with the RGB lights. It's about turning the heads with the specs. i7, 3060 Ti, 32 gigabytes of RAM. People know what this thing can do. And we've seen those Fortnite benchmarks. And the best thing is, if I was to go sell this PC tomorrow, I'm gonna ask you guys, if I put this thing up for 650 Aussie dollars, insta gone. Even $100 more than what I paid for it, insta gone. $200 more, insta gone. $300 more, might sit there for a few days, which is what I'm hoping for. And so I make profit. Or I can use this PC for however long I want, knowing that I'm not going to be losing money. Well, in a few years' time, you might lose a little bit of money, but looking at the i7 4770, which is 4 generations behind this, you can still get, I sold one of those PCs the other week with a 2060 Super, 700 Aussie dollars. Costs more than this thing right here. So with a system like this, you've just got the price performance through the roof. There's no way the new parts can match it. And it's the way to go in my opinion. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to drop a comment down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And with that aside, I'll catch you in another tech video very soon. Actually, we've got episode 4 of the $100 flip up challenge where we're turning $100 into a high-end gaming PC, and that is going to be exciting. So stay tuned for that. Hit that sub button, ring that bell. The moment it drops, you'll get to see it. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace out for now. Bye.